All right, it's 5:33. We'll call the emergency meeting, the Otter Creek Communications Union District committee meeting to order, full board meeting. And at this time, we call a roll. I see we have John Hill from Benson,
Right.
Larry Corsell from, I was mixed up, Larry Menden.
I'm here.
In my mind, I always conflate Menden and Chittenden
Brain
every
fog.
time.
Yeah.
James for Polteny,
Here.
Cassandra Hayes Goshen,
Here.
Chris, oh no. Chris Custer from Hubbardton.
That's me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Tom Franco, Rutland City.
Here.
Jessica Van Oort from Paulet.
Yes,
Here.
here.
And Marianne Goulet, West Rutland. It was here. I see her. We'll count
Yes,
her in.
I'm here.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me leave the soccer game. I was freezing my butt off.
I'm glad. We're glad we could be an excuse for you because it is. So we're here to talk about a letter that was sent. I think Amanda sent, and Amanda's here from the RRPC. I don't want to leave you out, but Amanda's here to talk about a letter that was proposed, sent out to the members writ large. There was some, emails back and forth. There was an edit that was sent by John Hill. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the letter? Both letters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So at this time, I guess I would invite John to talk about his edits, and then anybody else that has opinions, strong or not strong, we get them out here in the public forum. John.
Well, I guess the two things that I didn't like about the original draft were I thought we were being overly complimentary to Consolidated, and we're giving them a lot more credit than they deserved. And the simple fact of the matter is that they're investing because they see profit potential doing it. And while they deserve some credit for investing, still the bottom line for them is that they see it as a moneymaker. So I didn't like the extent that we went to complimenting Consolidated. And I really didn't like the last paragraph of the draft that said that there'll be challenges along the way, and the end results will be worth it. And I don't want to tell the people who the Herald article talked about, the guy who spent 30 years working on his hedge line, only to have what he sees as it being partially destroyed by the subcontractor working on it. I don't want to tell him, the high-speed internet will be worth it, because he pretty clearly feels that he's lost something. And we at least need to sympathize with him. So I drafted a draft 2, reducing the amount of good things we said about Consolidated, but still giving them credit for expanding high-speed internet. And talking about in the last paragraph how we've always for the last 5 or 6 decades at least, preserving the environment has been at the top of the state priorities. And now we have a second top priority, and everybody needs to work together, and we need to get the job done with minimal damage to the environment. And done by professionals who know how to do the work without substantial damage to the environment.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thoughts from anybody that isn't me?
I think that all makes a lot of sense. I know, John brings up a very good point about not wanting to say, hey, you know what, it's okay, wreck my stuff and it's all right because I get broadband out of the deal. He's 100% there. And, it has to be that Consolidated or anybody else that hires contractors, you're responsible in a way. You hired them, they're yours. It's very emotional, right? For somebody to lose something, especially like those hedges that, he's vested in. So, and I bet you if you were to talk to him, he'd probably say, you know what, I'd rather forego the high-speed internet and keep my hedges. I mean, it is a serious thing. And John's right when you say you don't really want to say that's okay. We understand stuff will happen. It's not really a good message to send. So I do agree with that.
Okay, Chris, anybody else with thoughts before I share my own?
I don't know who drafted the original letter. I think I've drafted my share of original letters, and it's a lot more difficult to draft the original letter than to edit it and make it sound different after that. So, the person who drafted the original deserves credit for doing it.
Yeah, Bill, I'm not sure if you want to share your thoughts first, but I just feel as being the representative from Rutland City, where all of this is taking place, and where my fellow Alderman Garuso has voiced his concerns so prominently in both the paper and at a lot of our meetings. I just wanted to give some more, I guess, insight and context from our perspective. Just speaking to, the aldermen, the board here in Rutland City, it largely seems like we are in this mission to essentially hold a Consolidated accountable. And so I think from that pure stance on principle, it kind of seems like a letter where we're supporting Consolidated seems to undermine that effort in a lot of ways. We had at our last meeting, this Alderman Garuso that you're all speaking of, that with his hedges, he wanted to essentially, as you probably read in there, rid them of their, or suspend their permit until they speak to us. Actually, he wanted to suspend it outright and see what would happen. I don't think we actually even have a permit with Consolidated. There was one permit that we did issue for one road for one particular piece of the project. And so just for some context there are a lot of layers to this of just misunderstandings and miscommunications as to what we actually have authority to do. But ultimately, I think from our perspective, we are trying to bring them to the table. I understand that there may or may not be, I don't think there is a formal relationship between the OCCUD and Consolidated, but in terms of communication, from my understanding, Bill or Amanda, it sounds like you've had conversations with Consolidated. We haven't really seen that, play out with the Board of Aldermen in Rutland City and Consolidated. And I think that's where there's this feeling that they're being unresponsive to us. And that's why we're trying to bring them to the table in such an aggressive way. And so I do think that the first draft of the letter kind of undermines that effort in a lot of ways. And John, I really appreciate, you amending it to kind of reflect that we do need to make sure we are preserving the environment and keeping that value just as high as our desire to have broadband. I mean, I think in Rutland, all of us, we want Consolidated to be successful, and we want them to really do this and see this project through. It's not that we want to stop it, it's that we think it needs to be done the right way and in such a way that we are respecting all of our residents, whether they're an alderman or not. And so that's really the symbolic message we're trying to send. And I think that the second letter captures a good balance of that. I think there's maybe one line that I would change. I'm not stuck on it, but just, where we say we support the work they're doing. I think we're really talking about their broader efforts to expand broadband in the area and in the region. And I think if we can kind of mesh those two to really reflect that message, I don't see an issue with it. But I just wanted to give some more context there. And I'm not really sure, is this letter, I know we spoke previously about it being sort of a coordinated effort with Consolidated. Did they request that we put this letter out? Like, what's the real need that is it just a preemptive measure to make sure we're preserving or initiating a relationship, or what's the need for it?
So I would speak, I'll speak that Bill more, Brandon, in case you can hear me. Yeah, I would say is the latter as opposed to the former, trying to preserve a relationship that we're trying to build with them to maybe partner with us to do this business. They've been fairly responsive and independent of our non-disclosure agreement, of given us a lot of background information and some hope that maybe that they'll work with us to expand their opportunity to make more money, right? And this coming from, I guess my own personal view of this is colored by this, having sat through 6 years of construction in Brandon and understanding that, I was the one that added that omelet thing in there, that, it's not pretty, progress is, it's not everyone's going to be happy. We have now 4,129 residents here in Brandon, and not all of them are happy at one time or another. And we had, one person in particular that was just in charge of managing that piece, and having, I guess, the greater mission getting lost in one or two or five people's feelings, for lack of a better word, emotions around something that happened to them, their particular experience, coloring an entire region's approach to this, conundrum of how do we get broadband to everybody. And so that, I guess that was the spirit in which I, started with the letter, instructed me. Amanda actually was working with me on this letter. I did my final touches again, omelet, that's all me. And trying to make this, to let them know that, like, we understand that this is not going to be an easy process. And I thought about, for instance, from that first meeting when we talked with Mary Ann, how, like, they put a big box in the middle of some traffic intersection that was blocking traffic, and they responded and moved the box. This is, again, something that happens in construction. When I do construction in my own home, like I get into the middle of it, and it sometimes isn't pretty, but in the end, like the end goal is, it's a beautiful thing. And I just didn't want that to get lost in, in our organization's mission to provide broadband to the entirety of the region, and have it, one town's experience or one city's experience, color the entire region's thoughts toward the fact that this is a positive thing, that they're investing in our town. And if they weren't responsive to you guys, that's a horrible thing. They should be responsive to you. But I found in our experience here that they've been very responsive, whether it was through our Segment 6 project, whether it was through them. They've been operating in our town this entire time, setting up, and we have not experienced those kinds of issues, and not had citizens reach out to us saying that they were having a problem with the subcontractors that Consolidated was working with. I just didn't want them thinking that we were opposed to what they were doing, or that, I guess, we didn't understand that. Construction projects, invariably things are going to go wrong. And if they're not, again, if they're not being responsive to Rutland City, that's a problem. It sounds like they haven't responded to any of your overtures to invite them to a meeting.
So at this point, there has been a meeting scheduled. But
did they not respond before? Like, were they like not responsive?
They were unresponsive prior.
Okay.
I spoke to our board chair, and that's how he characterized it to me, is that they weren't being very responsive to any of our inquiries. To me, it's, if you have, even with that first letter, or sorry, the first article that came out, they should have been in our chambers the first meeting they could, right? Like, where's their government relations person reaching out and coming and advocating? Like, I think that it's this sort of hand wavingness that is triggering some people on the board. And I get that, we don't want to blow that up into something that affects the entire region by any means. I just think there's I think as a union district, right? Like, we are supporting one another in this united effort to make sure we all have connectivity. I think that's the end goal. But I also think, it's not, when they're stepping on one of our toes, it's not, okay, well, that person out, we appreciate what they're doing for all of us. It's okay, actually, you've done a great job with us, but you need to do better with this other city that you are working with, because we're all part of this region and we all support each other. And I think that, to me, that's kind of what the role is, not something that would undermine that.
Sure. I mean, I can definitely, yeah, we're all like, what do you say? We're all in this together, right? We're all trying to, I just, again, from the Brandon standpoint, like we've found them to be nothing but responsive, that they were fantastic in dealing with through, our, again, 6+ years of construction. Any issues were taken care of when brought to their attention. I'm not sure how often they read the Rutland Herald, but they should be reading it more. Gordon's on the case. Anybody else have anything to add? I don't want to dominate this conversation.
I'll just agree with you, Bill, on there's always somebody unhappy with projects. And I wouldn't say Consolidated is always pleasant to deal with, but we just, I think we need to just hold their hand and show them that they need to be more responsive. But I'm okay with the draft 2. I think it is, we stress the importance of what we're doing here, and exactly, it's not going to, there's going to be issues and we just need to work through them.
Thank you, Marianne. Amanda?
Yeah, I guess I would just add that like some clarification. I thought we'd gotten into it the last meeting, but the issue was more not so much around subcontractor practices, infrastructure work, subcontractors or contractors. It's messy regardless of what the infrastructure is. But the allegations of being non-communicative, because I do have emails that would be subject to public information requests from the alderman chair back in September, I think it was, when they first started more aggressively reaching out to the alderman chair to meet, and knowing that they had calls and exchanged emails, and there had been ongoing communication trying to coordinate a meeting. So that was just on my end as both an RPC representative, but also support to the OCCUD, that there had been outreach. So it was not so much someone's hedge got messed up. I'm not particularly prideful of my hedge, so it's hard for me to relate, and I do apologize for that lack of empathy. And also knowing, I think we use the word arborist or someone certified. I think there are at best 3 arborists in the entire region, and there's one per every 152 square miles, 172 square miles in the state. So we need to be careful what you expect of contractors and who is most qualified to cut down trees. But I'd also point out to a history, and that is could be pointed to, like the city is also known for going in and cutting down people's stuff for the sake of infrastructure. So if we're pointing fingers, how far do you point fingers? Again, the article or the letter that's being proposed was mostly to address the fact that you do have private investment coming in, even if they gain from it. It's something to be noted, especially in a region that is direly in need of private investment of any kind. So to shoot down their PR or government relations is harsh, considering the avenue or this context that they're working in, and that they had been communicative, even if they don't give us specifically all the information they want. That does lead to the question in terms of communication with Consolidated regarding a proposed letter. I had reached out asking if there's any clarification in terms of when projects would be online. So I'd asked for some feedback if there was any that they could give that would not fall within the scopes of the NDA. So we got clarification for that one paragraph of when things would be coming online. And just to put out there that, yeah, as a CUD, our whole existence is to bring broadband out to the greater region. So if someone's going to build out competitive modern scale infrastructure, it is something that should be supported. And again, we do talk about principles and damage to the environment. I think you need to be careful because Vermont doesn't have there are tree wardens. Yeah, that is also a very good option. Vermont doesn't have the greatest reputation in terms of environmental conservation. No state is pure, and you can look at all the water quality warnings So you have to really be careful what you're going to pull into a letter and what Pandora's box you could potentially open with key phrases, just as an FYI. So I'll say that's where some of the letter stemmed from, not so much the subcontractors' work, but communications and pointing out investment in the region, just for context.
Yeah, and if I can just for a second, Bill, I mean, I don't know if in terms of Matt's communication with Consolidated, that's just how he characterized it to me when I spoke with him last night, was that they were not being responsive. So I don't know if that goes back further or if he, had separate times he was trying to meet that they didn't respond or what happened. But that's just how it was characterized to me. I do think, when it comes to sort of challenges that arise in any construction project or private investment and sort of balancing those with the benefits of a greater region, I think it's one thing to say, well, the city can, is when the city cuts down trees, that's an issue too. But there were allegations that Consolidated's subcontractors were saying that they were the city and they were giving this authorization notice to, like, people were coming out saying, what are you doing? And they're like, well, we're Threatland City, and they would cut down trees. I mean, I don't know, haven't investigated thoroughly, but these are the allegations that are surfacing. And so we have to take those seriously. I mean, until we have more answers, which is what the goal of this meeting with Consolidated is for. It's ultimately to get those answers and move on. But I think it's when these sort of allegations come up, I think our first step is to seek the truth of them before choosing a side of it. And so I think that's why I'm a little hesitant with, rushing to a conclusion and stepping in and saying, this is our position. Given that meeting hasn't occurred, we don't know all the details of, where in the pipeline Consolidated is not connecting with Threatland City, or who's at fault for that, or what is going on. I certainly can't tell you, because again, there has not been a ton of transparency in terms of our board meetings. I don't know what the chair has seen, but I'll just leave it at that.
Mr. Williams.
No, I want to add one more thing, because somebody mentioned the word union, which we are, but Consolidated is a union shop, and all the people in Pulteney that I saw that did the build out were non-union that they had brought in, which obviously is something to do with profitability, but there's going to be a lot of people out there in the community that work for Consolidated that may have a problem with the fact that they closed down their line crews and they hired these, I have a relative that works for Consolidated, and he said the scabs. So that's out there too, just to make people aware of it. We're not supposed to be supporting any one entity or another. We want, what Amanda said, we want the bottom line to be broadband to everybody that wants it. So.
Thank you, Terry. Let's see. Yeah, and it sounds like, maybe the the best course of action would be to not weigh in at this point, considering that Rutland has a meeting scheduled for tomorrow with Consolidated. There's some few edits that we want to get away from minimizing the minimizing Consolidated's responsibility to careful tree maintenance or environmental issues, or just being communicative to the towns that they're working in. And again, I guess and Terry, you're bringing up the union stuff too. That's an interesting. That's very interesting. But and again, I will, full disclosure, I was like, I saw that second article, and when I saw the word scumbag, I was like, well, I think at some point, we've got, this is starting to become a bit of a problem. I don't want them thinking that we think that they're scumbags, or that, and then, I mean, and I also know how the press works too. This, I'm sure, makes for great, sell a couple more Heralds, over the course of this past week or so, so.
I've had dealings with most of the tree services around, and most of the tree services have at least one arborist on staff. I don't mind deleting the sentence that ends in arborist or changing it to direction of trained professionals. If that helps. And you know, this is no different from any other news. Bad news travels fast and good news doesn't travel at all.
So true. So true. It's so sad. Yeah. I mean, and that's, and that's, I know that. Yeah. Yes, I agree completely. Marianne, Thomas, Terry, Larry. Any
Yeah,
thoughts?
there's so many good points you brought up. Obviously, Consolidated Communications has damage control, and they need to address their public relations, especially with the city of Rutland. Being a public official myself, when they have a problem, you need to address it. And so I guess that's going to happen. Yeah, I think one of the big things I had a similar issue with the subcontractors, but it wasn't a big deal to me. So I think I mentioned before, a tree company came up, which I think is no longer working for them, saying they had to trim a couple of branches. And I said, no big deal, take what you need to. And then they never showed up, and the two line crew guys came, and they had to do their own tree trimming. And you can tell they're not professionals at it. I had to give them my chainsaw. They couldn't get theirs started. And it was messy, but still not a big deal. And they've been up several different times doing different phases of it. They got stuck at my neighbor's, had to get pulled out with a tractor. So not a big deal. These things happen in construction. I know I worked at it for 45 years. Some days are good, some days not so good. I think it's a combination of supporting Consolidated because they are doing the build out, but at the same time to let the public know that at this point we don't have a relationship with them. Just to know that Otter Creek CUD is not getting blamed for any of this. In the end, Consolidated is responsible for all their subcontractors. That should be from day one. This is how we work. This is how we want things done. They're responsible. The buck stops with Consolidated. So hopefully they address that problem. So and yes, these things get blown out. One or two things end up in the paper. It's a big deal. It's an article. It sells. It's a headline or a byline. It sells paper. So we need to support what they're doing. It's needed for all the reasons that are mentioned in the letters. Also, telemedicine is a big thing that should be put in there. That wasn't. And then under the 9 municipalities, Mendon's not in there. I'm not sure just how far the build out has been in Mendon, but I'm not sure if they should be included in that. So. Yeah, so I think, we need to support them, but at the same time, not to over support them, but at the same time, just to let them know there's a distance between Consolidated at this point and Otter Creek CUD.
Thank you, Larry. Jessica. Any thoughts?
No, not particularly. I'm listening. I am not personally affected in either way by this, but I do agree that it might be better to, if there's a meeting tomorrow, it might be better to wait until after that meeting and see if Consolidated comes through and is communicative at this point, then it makes things a little different.
Thank you, Jess. Cassandra.
Sorry. So I liked what John said about changing the a couple of lines in the letter about the arborist to a highly qualified or professional. I liked that. I also like the fact that we do mention that we are open to working with Consolidated, but that's not the end all be all.
Thank you, Cassandra. Chris.
Well, I like the idea of waiting. You know, because, you know, you do damage control if you have to, you know, I mean, it's, if you don't, you don't. And it could change, you know, depending on what that meeting outcome is. So I do think we should take a neutral position, you know, more or less really protecting our group ourselves, you know, not taking anybody's side, just simply stating we're neutral, we understand, and that's it, you know.
Excellent. So I mean, it sounds like people are okay with maybe waiting until after, at least after this meeting, and adding in some of these edits that we've talked about. With softening languages around whether it has to be an arborist versus a tree warden versus some sort of tree professional. Sounds like John's got a pretty good handle on it.
Yep.
And it's
Good job, John.
Tom, there was a change that you said you'd like to see, and I don't think you were specific about it. What
Yeah,
was it?
I can mark it on and just, well, actually, Amanda, you said not to email, right?
So when it comes to email, you can email something to John. It's just like we can't have a big group email going back
Okay,
and forth. Like, it's
right.
not,
Okay.
you
So
guys
if y'all
communicate
are
with one
okay,
another. Yeah.
I'll just email that
Yeah.
to John then with the edit that I mean, it's a small thing. It's okay if we don't do it, but I'll follow up with you, John.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
professional tree, excuse me, professional tree company covers it. I would think, yeah.
Okay. All right. So, I'm not going to take a vote, but it sounds like maybe through, sensing the board that, we've got kind of a motion to table this, let John do some more edits, wait for the results of the meeting with Rutland City and Consolidated, and that we take, as neutral a stance as we can without, does that sound like right?
I got
Thumbs
one
up?
more thing.
Yes, Terry.
One of the things that maybe I interpreted it from the article, but one of the things I saw in Pulteney was traffic control. Where's the state of Vermont on this? Consolidated, the union shop, they have to have professional traffic control people, and these guys aren't. They use the internal people. They almost caused a couple accidents down here, I'm sure. But if we're going to say anything about that supports what Rutland wants, maybe we ought to mention something. Either don't say anything, or we're the customer. Customer's always right, but maybe we either be quiet or we mention something about the traffic control too.
My understanding as a select board member is that anyone who is directing traffic needs to pass the flagging course in order to do it, and that you can't just have somebody who's on the crew directing traffic.
Correct, but that's not what they're doing. They're using internal. Most Consolidated always has to hire professional flaggers, which kind of inhibits their ability to be profitable. They can't use internal. It's just another dimension to this.
Yeah, I know that, within our town, with the town of Brandon, all of our road crew, they all have taken the flagging course and been certified. So I don't know whether these subcontractors have that within their own organizations or not. That's certainly something that we could ask Consolidated about, and yeah, just to see if they're, as Marianne's saying, make sure that they're trained flaggers. And maybe that's a safety as a piece. If we do decide that we're going to submit a letter, that we talk about safety as well, just as. All right. Any further comment about our motion? It sounded like someone seconded the table. So by unanimous consent, we decided to table this until our next meeting, until after the Tom and this alderman have had an opportunity to meet with Consolidated. And if you can report back to us, Tom, about how that goes, that'd be fantastic.
You need emotions. So moved.
Okay. So Terry made the motion.
I'll second.
John make the second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye or waving your hand.
Aye.
All right, motion carry. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion carries the table. With that, is there any other motions people want to make?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Yes, John. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you guys for taking the time on a beautiful, I mean, the sunset's gorgeous right now. Beautiful Wednesday evening, and we'll see you at the next regular meeting. And yeah, Tom, make sure you send us a report.
Alrighty.
Have a good night, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Good
Aye.
night.